Welcome into Raptors today. Akil Augustine, as always, joined by Sherm Hamilton and the principal, Paul Jones, and Raptors fans left holding their head and questioning the effort of their team after a 119-108 loss in a game that I billed as a must-win game as they try to finish out this season and get hopefully out of the play-in tournament. Let's talk about it, gentlemen. Big takeaways from a night where the Raptors looked like they just didn't have the energy they needed. I'll start with Paul Jones.
I think, and I said this on Raptors tonight, at the end of the night when we talked about the game, I just felt there was a lack of consistent urgency. Like they played hard in pockets. They go down 10, then they come roaring back to take the lead in the first quarter, and you think, okay, they're back on track. They had the punch in the face. They've responded to it. You're going to be okay. They're going to be okay the rest of the game, and then they fall off again. And then later in the game they come back with that sense of urgency. And I just didn't think it was there consistently over the course of the game. And a little mistakes, little lapses in concentration, Washington scoring hoops and guys looking at each other going, I thought you had them, but you didn't tell me. And, I don't like to see those, particularly late in the season, Akil, when that team's right behind you. And now I think you're 0.001 of a percentage point in front of them. They've got the confidence. You're playing them again at their joint. They're going to get greedy, look for another win. So I would like to see going into Saturday's game more, consistent intensity and urgency with the way they play.
Yeah, I was surprised that the execution level dropped so much. And sometimes pressure can do that. Washington, nobody should be surprised at Washington playing the way they did. They'd been playing just as well as the Raptors going into that game.
Yeah.
So the fact that they were able to get off to a great start and they had multiple guys who played at a high level shouldn't be surprising. But there were just moments. That zone for Washington was interesting, how the Raptors really weren't able to consistently execute against that zone. They're usually better than that. And I spoke about this on Raptors Tonight. There's one play that really stands out in my mind. About 3 minutes left in the fourth quarter. They have a great sequence of ball movement around the perimeter. The ball comes to OG. He's got a wide open three, but he's trying to do the unselfish thing, tries to dump it down to Poeltl. Poeltl's moving into the paint to secure rebounding position. The ball goes out of bounds. That's an execution moment for the Raptors that you don't really see late in the game especially. So I was just surprised at that. And again, tip your hat to Washington. They're fighting for something too.
Yeah.
And you've got to play at a high level and execute. And those moments are playoff moments. I'm not saying the games were playoffs, but those moments, possession count, being able to execute in those moments is very important. And they're just as hungry as the Raptors.
This guy was really good.
That's an understatement.
Yeah. He kind of Kuzma sees the opportunity, sees the moment.
He's blossomed in Washington.
Well, but he's a different role, different spot.
They need him.
Got more responsibility, looked at as a leader. All of those things come together, and he's not playing in the shadow of LeBron. He's not just a support piece anymore. We talked to Glenn Consor, the Washington radio analyst, and they consider Kuzma one of their big three.
Yeah.
And they got to be careful, too. Bradley Beal didn't have a great game.
Exactly. Yeah.
So there's another dude that's waiting in the wings for Saturday that you're going to have to contend with, because I really don't see him not playing well on Saturday.
Now, hitting our silver linings playbook, we got to talk about, just as you mentioned, Bradley Beal, an off night. Guess who was guarding him for most of the night? It was OG Anunoby, a guy who, coming back from injury, was the team's high scorer with 26 points. And on a night where you get 13 and 14, respectively, from Siakam and Van Vliet, how good is it to see OG rounding back into form kind of at the right time, Sherm?
Well, defensively, he's always been there. So it's not a surprise that offensively he's going to find his rhythm and his timing. And it was good to see OG do what he did, especially when he did it in the game. It was late in the game. They needed him to score. As you mentioned, Pascal didn't have it going. Fred didn't have it going offensively. There's a little sequence between Fred and Jakob late in that game where they found a little pick-and-roll action, and Fred was able to find each other. But I just thought OG was aggressive. He was physical late in the game. He made enough threes to keep the team off balance. And then defensively, you can't understate the job he did on Bradley Beal. So it's good to see him round into form, but there's just something missing in terms of everybody being able to play well offensively and then the execution on the defensive end be consistent. So they've got to find that balance.
Yeah, I like the fact that I always say this about OG. His defense is something that never wanes. And on those nights when he's able to find his offense, and he's not one of those guys that, like Pascal or Fred, that puts the ball in his hands and tries to actively seek his offense. It comes to him, it comes to him in a secondary fashion, and then he can be aggressive. But I think he can take some steps to making himself more aggressive without, you know what I'm saying, like just taking the ball and saying, I'm going to do it.
No Keyshawn Johnson.
The post-ups, right? Yeah, just give me the damn ball, right? No, the post-ups, running the floor, getting out in transition, those kinds of things. Now he starts to feel good about his offense. And even though he's in a, quote, secondary role, the ball seems to find him like it did in that fourth quarter. And he was big. I always like the fact that you give me a defensive player, and I'll be okay because I'll turn him into an all-around player pretty soon. And I think we see that with OG. I just like to see it more at times.
All right, from the Silver Linings playbook to the man that runs the actual playbook, it's time for Nick Nurse.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this before, but it's another case maybe of the offense really hurting your defense in terms of
a little bit.
Ran off misses.
Just in a stretch there, I think, Michael. I think that we just didn't. You hear me talk about this all the time. We didn't execute enough of the schemes right from the jump. They had some of their best players taking open shots and driving right to the basket. Just from the start of the game, and that kind of told the story of. We had some really good stretches. Bunch of stretches of a lot of consecutive stops, but they had us back on our heels most of the night. They were more physical. They competed better. They deserved to win.
Well, with that being said, also, what would you say is the biggest element that has to change in the next game?
We got to compete. We got to compete better. Everybody that we need all hands on deck. Everybody that steps on that floor's got to compete.
This morning, Fred said in the Chicago game there were hardly any not many shots from there. Tonight he takes 17, and he's basically saying it was dependent on the coverages. What did you see them throwing at you that sort of had you guys sort of struggling in space?
Well, I think that Fred had a lot of good looks tonight. When you're bringing him up, I think that he had some decent looks. I thought in the first half we drove it in there to 6-8 feet and got nothing to show for it about 8 times. Right, where we got to score some of those, and that was a little bit of everybody from Scotty to Thad to Will to Fred to Gary getting deep, not all the way to the rim, but pretty good shots with some clearance. We didn't score enough of those. We didn't shoot it well enough from 3 as well. That's for sure. But I thought the string of turnovers hurt us as well.
You mentioned the 3-guard lineup, and I'm sure it didn't go the way you wanted it to. Is that something you just have to sort of try every so often when the opportunity presents and not get too down on it based on 5 minutes?
Yeah, it was a little tough tonight. It feels like, to me, we just lacked some execution tonight in certain portions of the game. Again, I think our defensive execution was poor. Except for there was a couple long stretches where it was very good, but we didn't execute very well at all at the offensive end.
As the Toronto Raptors move forward, a topic of conversation all year long has been their half-court offense, and a big addition, of course, being Jakob Poeltl, who stood out 23 and 13 in the last game versus Washington. Let's talk about the pick and roll with Jakob and Fred. Sherm, I'll start with you. People are concerned with the Raptors' half-court offense, and this is one of those things they're going to have to rely on. Pardon me let me know if I'm wrong as they move forward, because this is one of the better options they have.
I'd like to see more of it.
Yeah,
I would. I mean, I just think that they have the ability to find stuff. And here you see Fred directing traffic and sending Jakob up to set the screen. And as he rolls, Fred fills the spot, understanding that Jakob's going to seal. He can find him, dump down the ball, and he's able to square up and get a nice, easy jump hook. But I love the defensive effort. It leads to positive things offensively. And as a trail brig, if you're not setting that drag screen, continue to attack the rim. And Fred does a good job occupying the big defender and allows Jakob to trail and finish at the basket. But this is what I like. The screen doesn't work. Jakob recognizes that. He comes back out, rescreens, And look at the patience of Fred to wait for Jakob to turn around, present himself, ready to catch the ball, and now Fred delivers it. And Jakob, in tight quarters, he's able to maneuver. Either he's stepping through, he's got the little jump hook, he'll move the basketball, but he makes good reads out of that screen and roll situation. And I like when Fred gets that second dribble in the screen and roll, they find some really good things because Jakob rolls so hard to the basket.
Jakob's got great hands. He's got great patience, and that feeds his IQ. Okay, let's just catch the ball, wait, see what happens, and then I'll do something and see how they react to it. And, when he works in the screen and roll with Fred, here's the thing. Watch, he sets the screen. He's not exactly crunching people on screens, but he's standing still, and the screen is effective because of the way Fred uses it. Now the defender has to either, okay, am I going to go under? I can't go under on Fred. Am I going to get over? Well, look, watch here. There's not a whole lot of contact, but Jakob's standing still, and now Fred gets open. That's all he needs, half a body width, and he's open. Here, another one. Not a lot of contact. Now the defensive player, the big man, is occupied. There's space. Jakob patiently slides in, catches, waits till everybody flies by, and lays it in. He's got great hands. He's got great patience. And he's not, there aren't these wild athletic highlight-style plays, but he's effective. He's effective, particularly below the rim. And like I said, his screens are set so well with his jump stop on the screen, plant your feet. Fred uses it well. Now the defender, am I going to stick on the screen or am I going to try to do I get over it? Do I get under it? And just that amount of time gives Fred a chance to do something.
Now, that was his body of work against Orlando, but last night against Washington, another effective night. What did you see from him in that matchup, and how can he exploit that as they continue to play against Porzingis and those guys?
Same kinds of things, Akil. Like that for me, that I like all of the stuff that was on Sherm's telestrations and the ones that I saw, Jakob doing, staying in his role, setting good screens, rolling hard, making good decisions. I think what the Raptors need to do to help him out at the other end is keep people in front of him. Daniel Gafford played well last night, and he's one of those guys. He's on my it's a miracle when anything but a dunk goes in team because the guy it's all he gets. Great vertical spacing.
Or he's on the wrong end of a highlight.
Great vertical spacing, stays close to the basket, is getting dunks, getting layups, getting stuff like that. So if you can keep your man in front of you or keep him to the outside, then Jakob's not always coming over to help and offer resistance and freeing up Gafford on the glass. That's one thing I'd like to see them do to help him out.
Well, he's so efficient. I mean, if you look at all the highlights we showed, there's nothing in there where Jakob's wheeling and dealing to get a bucket. He's running the floor. They throw it over the top. He catches. Screen and roll. He seals, catches, turns, lays it in.
Low maintenance,
it's all,
too.
yeah. I mean, it took him 9 shots to get 23 points.
It's crazy.
It's amazing. So I think offensively, Jakob doesn't need anything else than what he's getting. He's involved consistently. Defensively, I like his presence as well. But the tendency is when you have someone who you feel can clean mistakes up behind you defensively, to take more risks.
Yeah, you gamble.
To take more chances. Yeah. And that can get you into trouble, and it can get Jakob into trouble having to rotate over, as Jonesy was saying, Gafford's there for the loop, or you get him into foul trouble. So they have to be better defensively, on the ball, keeping the ball in front of them, but they also have to, I think, execute better down the stretch, especially on Saturday against the Wizards.
Urgency,
a sense of urgency. All right, right now I urgently hand it off to the players, and that means Chris Boucher. Let's hear it.
Obviously a bit of a rough one tonight, especially the bench couldn't really find a rhythm. What did you feel happening out there that didn't allow you guys to find the rhythm?
I don't know. I think, it was a rough stuff of the game. And, clearly we didn't adjust to what they were doing. And, we got to play harder. We got to, we got coming off the bench. We still got to figure it out, our positions and all. But I think we just got to play a lot harder, guard the ball. They scored every position, I think, when we were on the floor. So we're definitely something we got to fix.
When Nick just was in here talking about everybody, not anybody specifically, everybody needing to compete more. When it's game 64, how disappointing is that for you guys to keep on hearing, or not keep on, but hearing that message pretty often?
Obviously it's something that we've just been trying to fix the whole year, and we lost a lot of games because of that. So, Obviously, when you say it that way, it's definitely not something that we want to hear a lot. But I think guys are trying, and it's just about effort, following the game plan, and finding a groove. Obviously, it's a little bit different now, but we just gotta play a lot harder than we played today.
I mean, they were playing a ton of zone. Chris, was that? Do you think that it was a little more difficult for the bench to handle?
Not really,
just because you don't necessarily see it all that much?
Not really. I feel like we usually play a lot better when they're in the zone, and usually a team don't want to play zone against us because of that. They can't really rebound like they want to. Usually we kind of find like the spots in the zone and all. And today we didn't do it. I think there's a lot of stuff that we could have done a lot better today. Stop the transition, but also play a lot harder. Like I said, the energy was at an all-time low, and you could tell from the beginning of the game, but also when we came in. And usually that's what the bench is supposed to do, is come in and change the energy of the game, and I don't think we did that today.
Hey, Yak. You were on for some of it. You weren't on for all of it. What did you see sort of go wrong with the transition defense tonight?
I mean, I don't know. It's tough to say. Like maybe a lack of effort, lack of communication. Like we just got to be more focused in those situations. Some of them were like bad execution on offense that just then leads to easy transition for them. If we execute better on offense, if we get our shots with a better rhythm, then that'll help us on defense and especially in transition as well.
When you add new guys to your team yourself, Will, and just by nature that changes some of the lineups out there, is communication sort of underrated as a thing that takes time, even though, I mean, from the outside looking in, it seems like it, you just talk. But is it? It's obviously harder than that.
I mean,
or is it?
I think defensive communications are, I mean, like everybody has different terminology,
Yeah.
but the principles stay the same. So as soon as you get that down, like I don't think that's really an issue. It's more, I don't know. Like I said, we got to be all 5 players dialed in for the whole possession on defense for more possessions of the game. Like we just let up a little bit too much, and during that game we had phases where we gave up runs to them that we just can't allow.
All right, let's talk about the Raptors' current situation. Barely on the outside, looking in playoffs. And for a lot of new Raptors fans, they're not familiar with the yesteryear of Raptor basketball, right? It wasn't always as good as it's been for the last decade or so. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about a time when the Raptors were in a similar position. For you, Jonesy, what was the last time you saw the Raptors sitting at the end of the season looking like things may not work out?
I probably have to look back more recently, but the one that jumps at me the most is 2002. Vince Carter had been hurt. They were kind of languishing and wallowing, and middle of March they lose like 2-3 in a row, and everybody's like, okay, that's it. Pack it in. It's not happening this year. And without Vince, they go crazy. They win 9 in a row, 12 of their last 14, and they're outside of the playoffs, and they get into a 7 seed. And in those days, the first round was 3 out of 5.
Yep.
And it's against Detroit.
Antonio Davis, Alvin Williams, those guys
played hard, man. That was, to me, that was one of the baptisms of, it was in that time period where 2000, 2001, 2002, like Antonio Davis seemed like he was always playing hurt. And they get into the playoffs against Detroit. They lose the first 2 games. It's like, well, they made a nice run to get there. Then they win the next 2. They go to Detroit for Game 5, and they're right in it with a chance to win it. And we talk about execution, Sherm's word execution, and urgency down the stretch. They have a brain cramp on the score at a critical time, foul when they shouldn't foul, take some bad shots, and lose the series in 5 games when they were right there. But impressively, they did all of it without Vince Carter when everybody thought they were dead in the water.
Yeah, I mean, I remember that year as well. I mean, we don't have to go that far. Last year, the Raptors were in a similar situation.
True.
Where they had to run it down at the end like that team that Jonesy spoke about, and they had a great after All-Star stretch that put them into position. So it's not that long ago, but, I mean, you go back to 2012, 2011, 2010.
The leaner times.
Whew, I mean, seasons were over by the All-Star break in some junctures.
Yeah.
We had a 22 and 60
Yeah,
where we were
so-
talking about draft workouts
Yeah.
in March, right?
Yeah.
Remember
So
that? Yeah.
It's not that long ago for people who've been around it for a while, but if you just jumped on the bandwagon within the last 10 years, you've been spoiled to see how much winning this franchise has accomplished.
Now let's talk about the guys on the floor right now, the leaders, really, the guys who have been there before. We're talking about the Freds and the Pascals. What's the messaging to this group right now, knowing that your season is on the brink and really it's kind of a fork in the road for this organization?
From the message.
What's the messaging
from
from top
those
down
guys?
from the players?
Yeah,
'Cause we
from
know
the-
what Nick's been telling us, what his mantra's been all along.
Well, I mean, when you hear the coach's message coming from your peers, it may resonate a little bit more. And leaders like Fred and Pascal and guys that have had their hands on the trophy, a guy like OG, they know what it's like. They know what it's like to be in those kinds of games. They have to provide an example. They can't just give lip service, but they've got to demand that everybody do their job. And sometimes if you have to hurt feelings to do it, you do it. I mean, it's about winning. Your loyalty is to winning, not necessarily to personalities or making guys feel good. And if a coach takes you out because he sees somebody can do something else, then you get your butt to the bench, you wave your towel, and you cheer for your teammates because you're in this thing together.
Yeah, one thing I will do is give this group credit because they don't quit.
Yeah.
And they've proven time and time again that no matter what they're up against, till that buzzer goes, they don't lay down. So having that as a backdrop is a good thing, but the leaders are going to have to play at a higher level. They're going to have to take this thing by the reins and go after it. Pascal, he didn't have a good finish to that game in Washington on Thursday. Freddie didn't have a good finish to that game in Washington on Thursday. They can't have that anymore for the rest of the season. They have to be factors on multiple levels. They have to lead the charge and let everybody fall in behind them. The good thing is, I like their makeup. They've been through the wars. They understand what it takes. And this is where leadership gets challenged.
Yeah.
Can you take the next step in a dire situation where every single game matters? Can your leaders will your team to that point? And we're going to find out.
It's eerie, the similarities and synergies between the Raptors and the Raptors 905, not just in the way they play basketball, but also the situations they find themselves in as the 905 battling for playoff seeding. They've got a pair of games against the Fort Wayne Mad Ants, who sit a couple spots above them in the Eastern Conference playoff picture. They got a big win. And, of course, we hand it off to Matt Cullen and Warren Ward, who break down that series right now.
Well, it's a big month of March for the Raptors 905. It's the final month of the NBA G League season. And Warren, they started out with a big win over the Fort Wayne Mad Ants. They get it done by 10 points, 135-125. Lots to highlight here for the 905, but let's start with Jeff Doughton Jr. Anytime the going got tough for the 905, he had the answers.
The madness has begun. Jeff Doughton Jr. done a phenomenal job, and like you said it best. Whenever the going got tough, he was there with an answer. Went on a 5-0 run by himself when the Mad Ants got within 4 points, and basically blew open the game and then never looked back. But he makes the right play. Got a lot of different guys involved, and most impressively, he brings on that calming presence at that point guard position that this team needs. When they need a bucket, he gets it. Whenever they need to make the right pass or play, he also does that. So phenomenal job by Jeff Doughton Jr.
And a major point of emphasis for the Raptors 905 was bench production as well. 47 points off the bench. A career night for the big man, Kyler Kelly. 12 points. That ties a career best. And 11 rebounds. That sets a career mark. So he was big in his minutes off the bench.
And a real testament to someone's character and performance in this game is when you don't play and then your number gets called and you do a phenomenal job in those minutes that you get. And you see him just being active on the glass. He's a mobile big. He can go up with the best of them and get easy dunks. But 12 points, career highs, you said, 11 rebounds, 2 block shots, only in 20 minutes. So prior to that, he was playing literally under 5 minutes. So he was ready for his minutes to be, given to him, and he's made the most of them. So I expect him to continue to do that and be an integral part of this team moving forward because they're going to need their bench if they're going to win a championship.
Raptors 905 now improved to 11-10 with 10 games to go in the regular season, right on the cusp of a playoff spot. Our next game against these very same Fort Wayne Mad Ants, it's on Saturday afternoon on TSN and on NBA TV Canada. For Warren Ward, I'm Matt Cullen. Back to you.
Christian Coloco, an injured Delano Banton, and Jeff Doughton Jr., all guys expected to be part of this bench unit for the Raptors, now spending some very significant and important playoff games with the 905. How important and how do these guys respond knowing they wish they were on the road with this big team, but they've got an opportunity really to show out during this stretch, Sherm?
Well, they just have to have a conversation with Pascal and Fred and just understand the value of these moments, and how to grow and the opportunity that they're being presented with. And if they approach it with the right mentality, you can see a lot of growth in these situations. They're going to get touches. They're going to get play calls. They're going to be in situations with the ball in their hands at crucial junctures in pressure moments to make plays. You're not going to get that on the big team right now. So you got to welcome this opportunity and understand how valuable it will be for their continual development.
Whether it's your old man beer league or the 905 or in the G League or the NBA, when it's playoff basketball, when it's must-win basketball.
Game point.
You can be out on. Look, I mean, we see the standings there with Fort Wayne just in front of them. It's time to learn how to, or if you know how to, make winning plays. So this is a really valuable experience for them, really valuable. I mean, they may find themselves in this situation. They hope to at some point in their NBA careers. Well, the best predictor of future success is what happens in the past sometimes. So it's a great situation for them to be in, and they need to embrace the opportunity.
Saturday will be a day of rematches as the 905 get to go against the Mad Ants once again, and the Raptors have a 5 p.m. tip-off against those same Washington Wizards. You can catch it on TSN and TSN Radio. That does it for Raptors Today. On behalf of our crew, Sherm Hamilton and Paul Jones, we thank you for watching, and we'll see you next week.